Guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, July 31st, 2024, and today we are going to be talking about Senator J.D. Vance from the state of Ohio, Donald Trump's running mate in the 2024 presidential election. It seems as if Republicans are having buyer's remorse with J.D. Vance as the vice presidential pick, as new polling data seems to suggest that J.D. Vance is now coming in to be the most unpopular vice presidential choice in multiple decades. This comes at a time that Donald Trump really needs some change in momentum with the announcement of Joe Biden leaving the presidential race. Kamala Harris has raised $200 million, all this media speculation, and focus on her, and she's gaining rapidly in the polls over the past 8 days since she announced, 10 days actually, since she announced her presidential campaign. Now, J.D. Vance is coming in, too, at a time where really Donald Trump is looking at this race and trying to figure out who amongst his surrogates could really be best there to win him over the Rust Belt, win him over the Sun Belt, win him over regions of the country that maybe he didn't do so well in back in 2020. We're talking about states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona, all states that went from being Donald Trump states in 2016 to Joe Biden states in 2020. And J.D. Vance, on paper, seems like the right guy to do that. He's a young 39-year-old senator, actually turns 40 years old in just 2 days, from Ohio, a battleground state in years past, and someone who had won in 2022, which many Republicans ended up seeing 2022 as a year that wasn't too favorable to them. In reality, it was meant to be a red wave, but obviously the Dobbs decision and a multitude of other factors really helped the Democratic Party in key battleground states, including Ohio, where we actually saw J.D. Vance underperform Donald Trump in 2020. But beyond that point, right, he's someone who's young, ambitious, in many ways could bring something new to the ticket. He was the only new for a while, the only new factor in this race. We had seen Biden, we had seen Harris, we had seen Trump. And so Donald Trump had a prime opportunity to bring in someone who could shake up the race in a very positive way. And J.D. Vance, for all intents and purposes, has done the exact opposite of that. Article after article after article talk about how J.D. Vance has the worst polling for a VP pick post-convention in United States history. How J.D. Vance is breaking polling records in the worst way. How some Republicans are expressing buyer's remorse over Vance as the VP pick. And all of these points that were brought up during the vet and prior to now stand to be far more valid. Like when J.D. Vance at one point in time allegedly compared Donald Trump to Hitler, now being his running mate, saying that he's, quote, a never Trump guy back in 2016. It's crazy how in 8 years so much time can change, but J.D. Vance said 8 years ago, less than 8 years ago actually, right before the election, that if Donald Trump standed to have a better chance at victory than what the polls and the forecasts were suggesting, that he might, quote, hold his nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. J.D. Vance has made a number of comments around President Trump, but even that doesn't even explain the very, very low approval ratings that J.D. Vance has at this point. I mean, there is nothing comparable in recent memory to J.D. Vance having such an unfavorability rating, one that is really making Republicans worry about this race, and even showing that Donald Trump admits in private that he is that J.D. Vance is damaging the election chances for Donald Trump, and it has also been very clear for members of the left and members of the right that J.D. Vance also just stands to be the worst possible contender, the worst possible choice that Donald Trump could have made out of 3 finalists: Senator Marco Rubio, Governor Doug Burgum, and of course the eventual chosen nominee, Senator J.D. Vance. Now, I do have to question some of the political instincts that Donald Trump has in the decision to choose J.D. Vance, and I really, really find it hard to believe that loyalty wasn't as big of a factor as I think it has been in years past for Donald Trump and how he makes endorsements and how he navigates a campaign. J.D. Vance as the VP nominee is someone I never even expected to pass an initial vet. It is very difficult, very, very, very difficult for me to believe that Donald Trump has strong political instincts when he chooses someone who compared him at one point in time to Hitler. I mean, these are things you rarely see, even getting to a point of being nominated in a low level position if you had a tweet even insinuating this, much less the role of Vice President of the United States. But it's very clear, and I mean, it's even said in multiple articles here, that MAGA and Donald Trump simply does not care about some of these past comments that J.D. Vance has made. But what they will care is the result of the 2024 election. I have to look back at these 2022 results and really understand also, too. Donald Trump, for all that he likes, he loves to win. He loves to pick the people that he believes can win a general election, which is why 2022 was a big embarrassment for him. He backed Herschel Walker in 2022. Run, Herschel, run. He tweeted that out, or I guess posted on Truth Social, put that out back in April of 2021, immediately after Joe Biden was inaugurated. Democrats were still in this honeymoon phase, and Herschel Walker had yet to even announce that he wanted to run for Senate. Donald Trump was pressuring him to run. He backed Herschel Walker. He lost. In Arizona, Donald Trump backed Blake Masters. He lost. Donald Trump backed Adam Laxalt. He lost. Donald Trump backed Dr. Oz. He lost, right? We found that in a lot of these states, Donald Trump also backed Don Baldick in the state of New Hampshire. He lost by 10 points, right? Looking at all of these states, Ohio may come in as a state where Donald Trump, in theory, chose the right guy, but in reality did not, because J.D. Vance only won against Tim Ryan by 6 points, and almost every single county in Ohio shifted to the left. J.D. Vance, from an electability standpoint, offers nothing to this ticket. Donald Trump was already going to win Ohio. And for someone that has never been tried or tested on the national stage and only in a localized fashion, it is very rare that a VP nominee or a presidential contender even gets to this point in time as someone who underperforms in their state. Could you imagine, Ron DeSantis making a pitch to voters across the country after he wins Florida by 0.2%? He couldn't have done it back in 2018. Why? Because he won that race by less than half a point. But in 2022, he won by 20 points in a battleground state. In theory, a battleground state. Ron DeSantis turned it into the exact opposite of that. A likely, if not safe, red state for that election. He had a mandate to stand on. He had a performance that was impressive. He could show the country that he knew how to win where it was necessary and knew what it took to beat Democrats and Joe Biden at that time in battleground states. J.D. Vance doesn't offer that. And beyond that point too, J.D. Vance has made a number of comments that if I was to look at this from the standpoint of, electability, I would be far from impressed. I think J.D. Vance has really made it difficult for Republicans to combat narratives surrounding what we see in terms of sexism, saying that he was right in making the call that this country is, quote, ran by childless cat ladies who are miserable and want to make the rest of this country miserable as well. He also received attacks from celebrities in which he doubled down on his comments, didn't apologize, doubled down on his comments, and went after Jennifer Aniston. Jennifer Aniston is probably one of the most non-political, very, very large names in American politics, especially in the suburban region. I say this for a reason, because J.D. Vance knows how to uniquely turn off voters in regions of this country that Republicans have relied on for decades for victory. Take a look at Mitt Romney. He didn't even win, and he had far better numbers than Donald Trump in the suburban regions of the United States. And while Donald Trump has very much made a new coalition in the rural areas, in some parts of urban America, at the same time, what 2020 showed is that coalition only lasted in 2016. And for 2024, J.D. Vance continues to alienate the same people that have already been trending left, not because their ideals have become more left-wing, but because the right wing has become more extreme. Because the party of Trump has been the party of Trump in 2020, the party of Trump in 2024, and it looks like if Donald Trump is elected, the party of Trump in 2028, and so on and so forth. And many voters that may have been Romney voters, McCain voters, Bush voters, Dole voters, right? H.W. Bush voters, going all the way back, are anti-Trump to the end and refuse to see Donald Trump in office again. And J.D. Vance just does not help that point. Because what J.D. Vance should have been able to do, and I think this is a perfect reality that wouldn't have happened, but I think other people could have done it. I think Doug Burgum could have done it, was offer a more moderate, a more tempered view on the election, a more sensible view on this race. Because for all of those other people out there that were in the Veep stakes, there were far better options. When we were talking about this very early on, I said it from the beginning. J.D. Vance, from the get-go, J.D. Vance is the worst possible nominee for VP. And I meant that. J.D. Vance was the one person I genuinely believed could do tremendous damage to the Donald Trump ticket. There is footage of J.D. Vance saying he likes policy proposals that he finds in Project 2025. Donald Trump has tried everything and it hasn't worked. So imagine when these clips run on air, because they haven't yet. The Biden and Harris campaign, Biden then, Harris now, have yet to run a singular TV ad taking that into full context. And that's a problem for the Trump-Vance ticket. Why? Because Donald Trump is out on Truth Social in the same tweet saying, I do not believe in what's there in Project 2025, but also saying, I know nothing about it. Then you have J.D. Vance saying, actually, I do like some of their policy proposals. There is nothing consistent about this ticket, and it is very clear that JD Vance was chosen for vibes rather than anything else. Not electability, not governing experience, not anything that could temper or balance a Donald Trump ticket. It's unlike what we saw with the Trump-Pence ticket, and believe it or not, that ticket fared far better than what I think Trump and Vance could if this trend line continues. If Vance becomes continuously unpopular, he started out with a 30%, 28.9% unfavorability rating. In just, a week's time, 2 weeks' time, 39% of the nation now has an unfavorable view. And I get it. As more people know who you are, you get more name recognition and more media coverage and more negative press and positive press. But JD Vance has now expanded that unfavorability difference between unfavorable and favorable from 3 points, doubling it to 6 points. And new data today shows, especially amongst independents, that tanks nationwide. The fact is, Donald Trump may actually fare better than JD Vance by election day, and sure, he's at the top of the ticket. But a lot of the reason why people voted for Donald Trump in 2016 was because they believed he would change in office, that he would become more presidential, and also that Mike Pence, who did very well against Tim Kaine at the debate, won by every metric. The polls, the pundits, etc., he won that debate. I do not believe JD Vance has what it takes to win a debate against someone like Governor Josh Shapiro, or someone like Governor Tim Walz, or someone like Senator Mark Kelly. I just don't see that happening. And so I think JD Vance at this point is more of a liability than anything for the Trump team, and Republicans are becoming, acutely aware of that. It is clear that the data and everything else, his history and his past comments, not only his history electorally, those comments I really just can't get out of my head, that in the first place, this wasn't a disqualifying factor from the beginning. JD Vance really is bringing nothing to this ticket. And I think while the decision may have been made in a time and era where the Donald Trump campaign believed that they were on a very clear pathway to victory, many Republicans said on national television that they feel as if they are running unopposed. They believed that Biden was falling asleep at the wheel, that Biden wasn't ready to win this election, that Biden, Sleepy Joe, all of these different comments, all of these different attacks, completely neutralized in a day, in a statement released on Twitter. And Kamala Harris's campaign now shows the Republican Party has nothing on her. Laughing Kamala is the way that Donald Trump refers to her. And he doesn't even say her name correctly. We are at a point where Donald Trump is running out of ammunition. Crooked Hillary, Sleepy Joe, Laughing Kamala, that's the way he says it. That's weak. And it comes at a time where JD Vance and Donald Trump together really need to ramp it up. Because now they're down $100 million. Now they're down in 5 out of the 7 battleground states. Now they're down in momentum. Kamala Harris is filling up stadiums the same way Donald Trump is. They pointed out all of these different things. Who believes that Joe Biden wins this election when he only brings 3,000 in an audience? And 3,000 for Democrats under the Biden-Harris campaign was a strong number. Filling up something that, looked good on press, looked good on video, looked good wherever they were putting it. But now, from any angle, no matter what type you're looking at, you're finding that Kamala Harris fills an audience. Kamala Harris fills a region and does very, very well in these battleground states. And I talked about it this morning. I talked about this new battleground state tour that the Kamala Harris campaign is going on. They're going to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, then Western Wisconsin the next day, Detroit, Michigan the next day, Savannah, Georgia the next day, Phoenix, Arizona the next day, Raleigh, North Carolina the next day, Las Vegas, Nevada the next day. You're talking, and I messed up, Arizona and Nevada, they should be grouped together. Point being, though, 7 out of the 7 battleground states in 7 days with her VP contender. The Kamala Harris campaign knows what they're doing. JD Vance is visiting his own home area, where we are finding that his approval rating is actually the lowest in the Midwestern region. In polls taken in that area, and polls taken also too in Appalachia, where JD Vance talks a lot about, very negative numbers. 28% approval in some of these polls. 28% approval and overall net negatives of 15 points nationwide and locally. That is bad news. We are now at a point where the momentum might have been on the Trump-Vance side every single day up until the Sunday before this one, when Joe Biden dropped out of the race. And we are genuinely at a point where JD Vance, as this VP pick, might not have mattered as much if Donald Trump was going to win the election against Joe Biden. Will make all the difference when Kamala Harris brings in a powerhouse vice presidential contender. Because based on her short list, I don't see many negatives. With JD Vance, I see all negatives. And so do the polls, and so do the people, and so do the pundits, so do the voters. And that's bad for JD Vance and the Trump ticket at large, because they desperately need something to halt this momentum, to halt this, sense of change and inspiration for the Democratic Party. And unfortunately for them, JD Vance, no matter how you cut it, just simply is not that. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go out and join. Make sure to follow on Instagram and Twitter. At the top right of your screen, there's also a video for you to watch and a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.